Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Wednesday, July 27th, 2022. Welcome to day 554. The Justice Department is investigating Trump's actions leading up to the January 6th riot at the Capitol as part of its criminal probe into efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. Prosecutors are questioning witnesses before a grand jury about Trump's conversations and meetings in December 2020 and January 2021 regarding his involvement in efforts to reverse his loss in the election, as well as his campaign to pressure Mike Pence into overturning the election and what instructions he gave his attorneys and advisors about the fake electors scheme. Investigators have also received phone records of key officials and aides in the Trump administration, including Mark Meadows, and recently seized phone records of top aides including John Eastman, the attorney who helped develop the fake electors scheme, as well as Jeffrey Clark, a former DOJ official who supported Trump's efforts to stop Biden from becoming president. Attorney General Merrick Garland, meanwhile, said the department will pursue justice, quote, without fear or favor. We intend to hold anyone who is criminally responsible for the events surrounding January 6th for any attempt to interfere with the lawful transfer of power from one administration to the other accountable. That's what we do. We don't pay attention to other issues with respect to that, end quote. Meanwhile, the January 6th committee and the House Oversight Committee called for a new inspector general to lead the investigation into erased Secret Service text messages related to the Capitol attack. In a letter sent to the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General and the head of the Council of Inspectors General, Benny Thompson and Carolyn Maloney raised concerns about Inspector General Joseph Kafari's failure to inform Congress of deleted Secret Service text messages in a timely manner, despite being required by law to immediately report problems or abuses that are particularly serious or flagrant, end quote. The lawmakers added, "We do not have confidence that Inspector General Kafari can achieve those standards." Moving on, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 75 basis points for the second straight month in a row to cool inflation, which is running at a 40-year high. The rate increase is the Fed's fourth hike this year, the most aggressive pace since the 1980s, lifting their benchmark rate to a range between 2.25 and 2.5%. Officials say they likely needed to raise rates about 3.4% this year and 3.8% in 2023 to slow economic growth, which could send the unemployment rate up. While Chair Jerome Powell said, quote, another unusually large increase could be appropriate at our next meeting, end quote, he rejected speculation that the U.S. economy is in recession, saying, quote, there's just too many areas of the economy that are performing too well, end quote. The Fed is aiming for inflation to be around 2%. The latest inflation data, however, shows prices increased 9.1% in June from a year earlier. And finally, Joe Manchin, in a sudden reversal, reached a deal with Democrats on legislation to reform the tax code, combat climate change, and lower healthcare costs. Manchin agreed to support roughly $370 billion in energy and climate spending, $300 billion in deficit reduction, 3 years of subsidies for Affordable Care Act premiums, prescription drug reform, imposing a 15% corporate minimum tax, and increased investments in IRS tax enforcement. The Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 would, quote, fight inflation, invest in domestic energy production and manufacturing, and reduce carbon emissions by roughly 40% by 2030, end quote. Lawmakers could advance the measure as soon as next week if it meets the Senate parliamentarians' budget reconciliation rules, which would allow Democrats to pass it without any GOP votes. The reconciliation package was revealed hours after the Senate passed a $280 billion bipartisan bill aimed at boosting U.S. competitiveness with China by subsidizing the domestic production of semiconductors. 2 weeks ago, Manchin abandoned negotiations with Democrats, telling party leaders that he would not support any legislation dealing with climate or tax programs, citing inflation concerns. It's not clear what changed Manchin's mind about the plan, but some Republicans accused Manchin of being deceitful about his intentions on the reconciliation bill in order to get Mitch McConnell to stop blocking the semiconductor bill. Biden said the deal was, quote, the action the American people have been waiting for, end quote. And in the polls, 538 says Democrats have a 52% chance to win the Senate, up from 40% on June 1st. Republicans, meanwhile, have an 83% chance to win the House in the midterm elections. CNN says 75% of Democratic voters want the party to nominate someone other than Joe Biden in the 2024 election, and 79% of Americans feel that Trump acted either unethically or illegally in his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, including 45% who believe his actions were illegal. 66% of Republicans, meanwhile, still believe Biden's win was not legitimate. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.